So, this mini lesson is getting started thinking about multiple choice strategies for MCAS, for the SAT, really for any standardized test. This slide deck or PowerPoint presentation is also in Google Classroom for you. I really can't underscore enough the importance of mindset. So, there is a link in your Google Classroom to a video about mindset. And the takeaway for me is what do you think about, right, when you're doing well? So, what do you think about? What's on your mind when you're doing well versus what's on your mind when you are not performing well? And a lot of the research shows that mindset will dictate how we do. That's how powerful it is to think about how well we can do. Um, I want to quickly go over the multiple choice strategies. So these are strategies that I expect you to know. You'll have the handout in your notebook, and you'll refer to these strategies throughout the rest of the year, and especially between now and the ELA MCAS in March and the Math MCAS in May. They're very similar strategies that you can use for both. So here they are. Some of these names might sound a little silly, but many of you may have heard about PO, and PO stands for Process of Elimination. And so the acronym is PO. And it is crossing out the wrong choices. So really, you are not finding the right answers. You are finding the wrong answers. When I think about this, it seems like a relief to me because all I have to do is decide at least two out of the four. So I hear the 50-50 rule. There's always four answer choices, A, B, C, and D. If you can decide between two out of four that you're pretty certain about, and then make a guess with the remaining two, that's as good as anything if you're not sure. Um, so again, you're paying attention to the wrong answers, not the right answers. That's one strategy that's really useful. So process of elimination, if you could go back to your basketball article that you read for class and try to find out which of the questions you used process of elimination for. So here's your basketball article. There's always four answer choices. Which of these did you definitely use process of elimination for? And cross out maybe two of them and then make a best guess for the remaining two. And also think to yourself, how did you decide which to eliminate first? And that'll give you a head start on how to think about moving forward with that strategy. So this one sounds really obvious, but there is only one answer, and it's always in front of you. So I don't know about you, but when I took multiple choice tests in high school and in college, I struggled with them because I thought I always talked myself out of the answer, or I always gave myself a better alternative. And you don't want to get into that habit or that voice in your head that is doing more work, talking yourself out of the question. So for me, this is helpful because the answer is literally staring at you, and it's only one of them. You might think, okay, there's two answer choices that sound really good to me, but it's the best answer choice that you need to be concerned about. This one is really, really important. This strategy number 2, answer all questions all the time. So you never, ever want to leave an answer choice blank. You get penalized more if you leave an answer choice blank than if you were to answer with the incorrect answer, if that makes sense. So that's something that is a really easy way to bump up your score. This one too, I think you definitely have control with this. To take your time. You might skip through this strategy thinking, okay, whatever, this isn't an important strategy. This is super, super critical, and I'm going to explain to you how it works. So even though you take Illuminate and MCAS on the computer, right? You can still highlight and use the icons within Illuminate or within MCAS to highlight words or to mark them or to annotate them. It is really important as you're reading through the answer choices. Instead of saying, oh, right, I know that the answer is C, um, literally cross it out, okay, and put that at least a mental X through all the answer choices that you have eliminated. I also like to use question marks as well when I'm answering tests like this, because question marks remind me, they're a note to myself where I can think, okay, maybe this is right, but I'm not going to exit out until I've gone through all the answer choices and double checked all of them. So it's really important. Please read through all the choices all the time before you use PO or before you choose the remaining answer. You all are really good at this as incoming 10th graders. One thing I've noticed about you is that you annotate the text really expertly. So another thing to add to your annotation is to write 1 to 2 words in the margin of the excerpt or the text, or underline main points. I would also add to annotate for the universal idea, right? So if you sense that there's a universal idea here, make a note in the margin. Again, on Illuminate and MCAS, you are on the computer, but you do have scratch paper, and you can keep that paper to the side of you just to make notes for yourself. And I advise that strategy for both Illuminate and MCAS. And I also advise that you take advantage of the online annotation and highlighting tools as well on both Illuminate and MCAS. So just take a moment right now to go back and look through these 3 or 4 strategies. Annotate, taking your time, answering all questions. There's only one answer, and PO. And with all of those together, think through with the basketball mock test that you took in class. Think through which ones you used without maybe even knowing that you used them, and think through which questions you might want to go back and try as a strategy that you think is a better way of answering a question. And I will give you a moment to do that. So just press pause on the video for right now. Okay, so we are returning. We've gone through 4 strategies up until annotation, and now we're going to get into another layer of strategies for multiple choice. And this is previewing the questions before reading the excerpt. I want to point out here that excerpt is another word for passage. It is when, and many of you know this, but just so we're all on the same page, it is when usually on a test like MCAS or Illuminate, the testing company has taken part of the passage and turned it into a piece for the test, a slice of the passage for the test, and that is the excerpt. So this sounds, again, obvious, but think through this with me. Know what you are reading for by knowing what the questions are asking. So it's like if I know I have to get somewhere if I have to go from Roslindale to Southie, South Boston, and I know that I need to take public transportation, I'm just not going to take the first bus that I find um, in Roslindale. I'm definitely going to research ahead of time. I'm going to look at my bus map. I'm going to look at the departure times, the arrival times, when I need to be at my destination in Southeast. So that's me knowing what I am doing in my commute and looking ahead. And it's really the roadmap. The questions, I cannot say enough. Just previewing and looking at those questions before you even read the passage or the excerpt will help you tremendously. Think about it like getting on the bus. You always want to make sure you look at where the bus is going, or at least know your roadmap before you jump on any bus. And that's important when answering multiple choice questions. Our brains really can't go from reading a very long excerpt to then going back and looking at the questions, because by the time we go back to look at the questions, we have forgotten what the excerpt is about, or at least I have. So this strategy is super helpful for a lot of students and also for me as well. So, especially as the questions get harder on Illuminate and MCAS, we definitely want to use previewing the questions before reading the excerpt. This is a question type, and it says, what is the author's main point in this excerpt or passage? And my questions for you will always be, where do you go in the excerpt to find those answers? And how would you answer these questions? Okay, so there's two answers that I'm looking for. Where do you go in the excerpt to find the answers, and how would you answer these questions? So I'm looking at this. What is the author's main point? Well, even before reading the excerpt, I know that I'm probably going to be looking at the introduction, maybe where the last sentence in the introduction, the thesis statement, and then I might want to look towards the end just to see if that main point is repeated. Um, so I don't necessarily have to read through every single word to get a general understanding of the author's main point. I know as a writer, and you know as a writer, where you are going to put the main point. We know that the main point is another word for thesis statement or claim or main idea, and that usually goes in the first paragraph. It could start off the essay, it could be the last sentence of the first paragraph, and then we usually repeat that at the end. So I'm not necessarily going to read every single word just to find what the author's main point is. I might go back and double check what I think the author's main point is and read it a little bit more carefully to make sure I have the right answer, but I definitely can get a sense of the author's main point without reading the entire excerpt. So this strategy is consider the entire excerpt, but focus on the claim or thesis often found in the beginning paragraphs. I also like to take a look at the ending, the conclusion, because um, that closes out or repeats the author's main point. You will definitely see this question on Illuminate or MCAS, so take a look at this and feel really confident in how you answer it after our work over the next couple months. So the question is, how did the speaker's tone change in this passage? How did the speaker's tone change in this passage? So again, this strategy is looking at the questions before I read the passage. So if I look at this, I think to myself, oh, good, I know what tone is because we just did the rhetorical triangle unit, and I know that tone means attitude. So I'm really looking for the speaker of the character who is speaking, the author, if it's the author who's speaking, whoever is doing the speaking, I'm going to look at their attitude at a couple different points in the passage. I'm going to look at the beginning, the middle, the end to see if I can determine, and I can if I take it in chunks like that, I can determine and figure out how the tone is changed from beginning, middle to end. So the strategy here, consider the entire excerpt and focus on the speaker's attitude change from beginning to middle and end. This is one of my favorite question types, and I call this a point to or go-to question type because it literally tells you where you want to go in the passage. So unlike these two, which you kind of have to do double duty, you have to consider the entire excerpt and then add on and look at specific parts of the passage. This one, you go to line 17 and figure out what they want you to focus on. So in this type, in this example, in line 17, what does the word gracious suggest about the speaker's tone? So I'm noticing that it's telling me to go to line 17, okay, and I will do that. But in previewing the question, my brain is taking a look at this word gracious. Now, let's say I have no idea what that word is. I just note that as I read line 17, I'm going to want to look out for how this word is used. But they're just not asking for the definition, are they? They're asking you to go one step further, and they're asking you to explain or identify how gracious, right, correlates to the speaker's tone. And again, one step further, because the speaker's tone, we know, is attitude, the speaker's attitude. And I just want to clarify the speaker is whoever is speaking. Maybe it's a character. Maybe it's the author. So if it was Martin Luther King, Dr. King's blueprint speech, he would be the speaker, right? If it's Colin Kaepernick's speech, he would be the speaker. But if we're reading a play and it's a character speaking, or a book or a novel and the character is speaking, it would be that character. So these again are a lot of students really think, okay, I'm just going to go right to line 17. I'm going to look at the word gracious and I can answer that question. But as you can see with this one, there's a little bit more going on. But it's in general, right? This is going to be our focus area. You might have to read a couple of lines before or after. So that keeps popping up. My suggestion or my strategy is to go back 3 or 4 more lines before this line. So I say line 14 and read for context clues to understand the vocab word. What does this word tell us about the speaker's tone? So the vocab word is gracious. I'm really looking at words around that to decide, is it positive? Is it negative in meaning? What does the word suggest, right, about if the speaker's tone is positive or negative? I'm going to stop right here. This is actually a lot. This slide is really important because it goes through 3 different question types, and you will see each of these 3 question types on Illuminate in January and MCAS in March. Notice again, your takeaway or the thing that you can do is you can get to know each of these question types. You can feel confident in understanding exactly where you need to go with each question type. You don't need to be an expert in the whole passage. You're really taking one question at a time and you're chunking it and you're saying, okay, I'm just dealing with this question right now. What is the author's main point? And I know where I need to go to find that answer. So we really don't let the questions kind of bombard us. We take one each at a time. And this is a great way to do that, this slide right here. And then finally with this slide, be familiar with words like author's main point or speaker or speaker's tone or speaker's tone changing, or speaker's tone suggesting, right? And finally, I cannot say enough how important it is to start with the questions. Read the questions first. Don't read all the answers, but read the questions first and then go back and try to find those answers in the excerpt, or at least read for like getting on the bus, right, with Southie as my destination from Roslindale. I'm definitely going to figure out author's main point and figure out where that is as I go along. And I'm going to know where it is because I have actually looked at the question beforehand. So we'll pause here. There's a lot of other strategies continued in this PowerPoint presentation, but I'm going to stop this one at 5 so you have a chance to digest this information and go back to your basketball mock test to see with this discussion question, what did you do first when you received this test? Did you look at the questions first, or did you get to reading right away? Which do you think would be best in a test-taking situation?